What's up, guys? Today we are on Mission Impossible, Operation Mandalorian Christmas. I was contacted by a friend. We'll say a friend. Um, and he wants a Mandalorian helmet, and his son is a huge fan, and he wants to Mandalorian, and he really wants a helmet. So I'm in the impossible task of trying to get this guy done. So it is 11 o'clock p.m., December 24th. We have to try and make a Christmas miracle happen. Turn this guy into this guy. That one's already gone. It'll be gone in about half an hour. So I have to try and get this guy into that by the time Santa reaches his house. So stay tuned and let's see if we can make it happen. All right, here we go, guys. So a couple of the tools we're gonna need: X-Acto knife, kind of get a little bit of the supports gone, needle nose pliers, regular pliers, and if you have one, a pick and hook is really good to try and get into the little tedious places here. Let's go. I usually like to start at the back and take off this big piece. Just like that. First support it off. There's your visor, or your vent. You may want to use eye protection. I highly recommend it. I personally don't have any right now. Mine actually are MIA. They have legs of their own apparently and get up and decide to lose themselves. Either that or I have a couple of kids that like to play with stuff. Sometimes you're going to run into this. This is where it comes to pain. Where it was a little bit softer material or something like that in the spool, I like to use Overture and Hatchbox basically as my go-to. And I've actually had a pretty good experience with Urion, or however you pronounce it. For a cheaper brand, that stuff, I don't know, it holds its own. I mean, compared to all the other ones like the AMZD, the Amazon Special and stuff, it's I will definitely use it on things that aren't quite as important as like a helmet. But if I'm making like little models or something, Urion is really good. So this one's giving me a bit of a hard time. But if everything went super easy, then that would take away from the intensity of this build. Oh, you're gonna really put on a show, aren't you, earpiece? Well, that worked. Gear number 2. Now for the big boy. Getting this guy out. Now is when you're gonna really want your X-Acto knife. So what I'm gonna do with the X-Acto knife is right in here. I'm not sure if you guys can see it too well, but they have all the little supports all across. We're gonna try and skim that down so it's easier to pull it out. Be very careful when doing this part. Extremely careful, because it's obvious that it's very easy to cut yourself with any mistakes. So if you're under 18, have somebody help you. Always good to have somebody around too. Don't try and rush it. This is one of the stages you really don't want to rush. Like, I'm going over it a couple times. I'm not trying to go fast. I don't want an injury or anything like that. It's, like I said, it is very easy to hurt yourself on this step. Or you can just try and pull it. Like, a lot of people try and pull it. I don't like to do that because this is a very, very flimsy part, and I don't really want to have it broken after 4 days. A 4-day print. So I like to give it just a little bit of this. And again, like I said, I'm just going over it a couple times. I'm not trying to get through it in one slice. A couple little, just to kind of break it down. That's it. Nothing extreme. Just kind of break away a couple of those supports that attaches from the support to the actual helmet. Just a little bit. There's no need to go crazy with it. Be safe. Be careful. Work smarter, not harder. So now we should be able to kind of just start breaking this off. So that is a big piece right there. And if I didn't, chances are it has a lot more reinforcement on here. So that's why I like to just kind of skim it down just a little bit. And there is a couple small pieces left here in the corners. That's when the needle nose pliers come in handy. Again, be careful because sharp pieces. And we have a tiny piece on the other side. I don't know if you guys can see that. There you go. Go from the inside now and pull it out. Alright, now we have just these tiny supports on the bottom, but that's not much. A couple pair of pliers and that's all done. Okay, so where we're at now is we're going to do a prep sand on the helmet. So right here, if you look closely, there's a Z-seam line. Those ones are really, really a big pain in the butt when you're trying to get a really nice finish. So this stage of the game is actually the most important. Not the primer, not anything. It's the initial layer that you're gonna start priming everything on. So what I'm gonna use is my palm sander here. And I'm gonna use 180 grit. I'm gonna go over the entire thing before I start my hand sanding. And we're gonna go over that the best we can, try and make it as smooth as we can off the hop, because that's gonna help your layers later down the line. If you want to try and avoid this spot, you have at least a day at it. Doesn't matter how much Bondo you add, this and that. Your initial layer is the most important. So if you want to stay protected, we're gonna put on our little respirator. I know I don't have any nozzles, but it's better than nothing. It's not like we're kicking up paint, but we are gonna be kicking up some dust. Here we go. Okay guys, so now we're about 2 hours in. We've taken off the supports. We've given it our initial sand, as you can see on that Z-seam. Pretty much invisible now. It's nice and as smooth as it could be. Now it's time for more sanding, because when you're preparing and painting one of these helmets and you want it to look as smooth and screen accurate as possible, there is hours of sanding. So that's what we're gonna do, and this will probably go into like a time-lapse format, but you'll see. So before I even add the first prep of coat, as I keep on stressing, and I can't stress it enough, the initial sanding is going to be how much easier it is down the road as you start priming and painting. If you don't actually put a lot of effort into it before you throw on your first bit of primer, you'll learn. It's trust me, take your time on your initial layer and the rest is smooth sailing. But there is a lot of sanding. So here we go. Let's start sanding in. Right now I'm going to use a 220 grit piece of sandpaper. I used the 180 when I did the initial with the palm sander, so I got a fair amount off of that. You do want to be in a ventilated area. I'm in a pretty big basement with a small fan, and I'm not kicking on much because I've already done the initial. This is just a clean over before we do the prime. Maybe a respirator. Just stay safe, stay ventilated, and unfortunately, if you want a good looking helmet, you have to put in the time. So let's get sanding. Alright, it looks pretty good, nice and smooth. You can hear that, you don't hear any You don't hear any like ripples or anything like that. So now I think it's time. We're gonna go and put it in some water, rinse off any little bit of excess material, and then it's almost time for prep. Time for some primer paint. All right, guys. Before we actually go into our primer and prep mode, I think we have to try it on. So we're gonna get Colby here to, this is my youngest son. He's gonna be our little youngling.
Hi.
All right. Are we good? We good?
Yeah.
Thumbs up? All right. Approval. Okay, so now I'm scrouched down because it's super cold out, Canada. We're in primer mode. So what I'm using right now is a brand from our local Canadian Tire here in Canada. It's an automotive shop. This is a primer, filler, everything. It's really good. I use black just because it helps me, everybody's different, see any imperfections. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna give it a nice thin coat, give it about 10 minutes, do another coat, let it warm or let it set. I'm gonna take it in, I'm gonna sand it down, and this is probably what we're gonna do about 10 times. So make sure you're in a ventilated area, wear your respirator. I know I don't have my attachments, but it's better than nothing. And here we go. I do have it on a swivel table. As you can see, it kicks up a lot of dust. Or paint fume, sorry. That's pretty much it for the first layer. We'll just let that sit for about 10 minutes, like I said. Then we're gonna add another coat. We're gonna bring it inside, let it warm up, sand it down. We're gonna add a little bit of Bondo now that we've got our initial primer down, and go from there. Okay guys, here we are. So now we've done the initial sanding on the fresh print. We've removed the supports. We sanded it down, we fine detailed it. Now, that is the most important part. I'm gonna say that a million times, because look at what we have now. So you can't really see, the lighting is kind of bad. I don't really have the greatest phone. But if we didn't do that prep sanding, you would see infinite amount of lines everywhere. Kind of like you can up here, but it's very faded. So once we add a little bit more, a couple more coats, it's gonna be good. But imagine we didn't do all that sanding. That's what I mean by work afterwards. The one spot we really are gonna have trouble on is here. So this is where the good old red toothpaste comes in. So what I'm going to use is a little bit of spot putty, and I'm gonna do it before I give it any sanding. So I'm gonna add it in to a couple of the very rough spots, which is gonna be here. I'm gonna feed it into the creases so that it has a nice finish up and down here too. I'm gonna put a little bit on the cheek. I'm gonna try and avoid all of the major hard spots like here and in here, because trying to sand and blend that in is a lot of work, and it's pretty good actually. So I just want to try and get in here to make it as best as possible. And then here, that's really all you need if you do a good sanding prior. I mean, if you don't, I mean, that looks pretty good in the light. I'm trying to show you. This is why I'm saying the beginning prep is so much. So what I'm gonna do, let's get started. I'm gonna put on my gloves because Bondo, if you've ever worked with it before, it's basically used for like automotive, but it's some serious stuff. It stinks. It's hard. It's not the greatest to work with, So anyways, I'm gonna add very, very small amounts just to kind of fill it in. And the reason I'm doing it before sanding is because I want to sand it in. So I'm gonna add it in. I'm gonna try and go as thin as possible because it isn't the most fun to work with or sand. It kicks up a ton of dust. So as you can see, let the camera focus in. These lines are going to be extremely hard to get. So that's the only one that Bondo needs. But as I was saying, if you put in the work, this is going to be so much nicer. Trying to do it after the fact is hard. So these ones, it's unavoidable. These are the ones you have to fight with. So a nice thin little strip of Bondo, which I'm going to fill in. I did it already a little bit on this side, and I'll show you what it looks like after. So this top one actually wasn't the greatest. I guess I'm gonna have to tweak this one. This is on the 10S Pro, so we tried a little bit of a different setting here as opposed to the 10S. And the top was a little bit rougher. We'll fix that. I mean, it's not the end of the world. We're definitely gonna fix it. But I mean, so that's about the hardest spot on it because we don't add any supports. So now we're gonna add a little bit here. Very, very little bit. Just enough to try and fill it. Because like I said, once we go over with the primer filler again, it will get in. So I'm just touching up on some spots that I feel need a little bit of attention. Not the most, not insane amount. You want to try and avoid the really hard spots to get in, like I said, in the creases. So I'm going to go all around and hit those spots up. And then we're going to do more sanding. Make sure it's all nicely blended in. So everything else looks pretty good. We're gonna go around the back and just see if we need to hit anything over here. I'm actually pretty content with the way the back looks. You see these ripple lines, but they'll fade as the more coats come in. So yeah, that's about it. So anybody, if you can fill it completely with Bondo, but now we're gonna do a sanding. We're gonna do a sanding now, blend it all in, hit it with some more primer, and I'm gonna save you guys all of that over and over again because this is basically all you're going to do for like the next, who knows, 5, 6, 7, 8 coats. You're just gonna repeat this stage and until your desired smoothness, and I'll see you guys back once we are pretty happy. Okay, so after yet more sanding, feels nice and smooth. There isn't much to look at. Now it is time for more paint. More primer, sorry. More primer and filler. So this is where we're at. Again, as I said, I can't stress it enough. The amount of time you spend on it before you actually slap it with primer and stuff is going to be how fast your production goes and how good a quality you have. So I'm thinking this is literally 2 coats and a little bit of Bondo. I think we're well on our way to a really nice and smooth helmet. So let's go put on some more primer. Okay, so we are on our 4th coat. So everything looks pretty good. It's not up to my standards yet. I believe we can do much better than where we're at. So I don't like to settle. I want to look exactly like the show. So as you can see, things are starting to look really good. So what we're going to do now is we're going to touch up a little more Bondo on here. We're going to do a little bit more on here. As you can see though, it looks much better than it did earlier. So we're getting there, just a tiny amount. We're not going to sand it in until we've actually got our Bondo where we want. Then we're going to sand and blend that and do some more primer. So let's get started. So our little touch-ups here, our little touch-ups there. We're about, I would say, 60% in now, guys. Considering we've been at this now for about 6 hours, this is probably my record. And I have made tons of these things. This is hands down the fastest I've ever done it. And my arm is on fire. I would be lying if I said it wasn't. Like my arm, all that sanding repetitively. Usually this is a couple-day process, so you get a bit of a break. But I mean, if it's Christmas, this is for a Christmas gift. Like I said, right now it is the 24th. It's about 4:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we're in crunch mode now. If things go well, we can have this thing done hopefully by about 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock tonight. If I keep on pace the way I'm going right now. I mean, this is absolutely insane. I'm definitely not doing any work tomorrow. I think a break is in order. And I'm pretty sure my arm, I won't be able to lift it, but you gotta do what you gotta do. I mean, it's for Christmas, so always push a little bit harder for that. So that's pretty much it. I don't really see anywhere else I'm not too happy. Actually, now I do. Right there on the lip. So that's pretty much it. Like, everything is starting to come together. So that's it. The back looks great. I'm not worried about here. The vent looks good. I'm not seeing any ripples or bubbles. We do see still some faded lines, which again, once we actually have our initial set, we're gonna be good to go. So this all looks pretty good. We're gonna let this Bondo dry up, and then again, we're gonna go back to more sanding. So I usually do, it's a little excessive, but if you want a good finish, I treat every helmet as if it's for me. I'm not going to speed on it for a customer or for a friend or just whoever. It's every helmet that I make, it's like you're making it for yourself, so you put everything into it. So this guy, he's about 60% done, like I said. So we're going to let that Bondo dry up. We're going to do some more sanding, and I'll update you so you don't have to sit through watching me do it once again. After I've got it sanded, I will show you a little bit more spraying. And it's snowing outside, so it really sucks, because right now I am doing the best I can to paint it outside with the aerosol can, and not have any water drops in it. But it's just how it is. But you gotta do what you gotta do. If this was summer, this thing would be even better. So here we go. Okay, so this is the fourth coat after the Sando and the Bondo. I'll get as close as I can to give you guys the details. So this is what we're looking at. There's very faint lines. We're gonna add a little touch of Bondo there. You can see what I was talking about on the helmet now on the top. It's looking great. Very faint lines in here. We're gonna add just another touch. I'm gonna turn the helmet around. So you guys can see all of that. And the opposite side. So here we are with everything. So this is what I mean by prep. We have a little dust spot there, but we're still in prep stages, so it's not the end of the world. So I'm gonna do a little bit more Bondo. Basically, where I'm gonna do it, I'm gonna do a little touch here. I'm gonna do another little touch up here. Sand it down, Same scenario, and that's then it looks like she's basically ready for the gloss black before we go to the paint. Well, we made it. Now it's time for the chrome. Alright, there's the first coat. Well guys, we made it. Okay, so with 11 hours we got it done. I don't know how we managed to, but Christmas miracle. So we ended up finding the way.
Merry Christmas.